Okay. All right. Welcome to the Green Room. It's an intimate conversation with one of the cannabis industry's very important persons. Today, we have the pleasure of getting to know Adam Hijazi a little bit better. Adam, considering who you are, I had a very hard time finding any real information on you on the internet. Is that because you're an OG or because you've been too busy to seek out the press?
Hi, Susan. First of all, thank you for everything that you do, and glad to be here and chat. To your question, you know, um, I think a little bit of both. I've been definitely busy over the years, but my online platform really when I first started in 2009, 2010, having that ability to be online or in public to say can potentially cause you harm. You could be potentially targeted, so it really wasn't something that was at the time, but uh it's something of today, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier when we talked, I really think that you need a publicist because you're a super important person in the industry and you've done so much. Um, so you got started in 2009.
Yeah, that was when we started to kind of, look for properties and, kind of started to really get involved into the industry on a day to day.
That's a really long decade. It's
Yeah.
it's crazy what you've been through. So the early days in Long Beach, you got started in Long Beach, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. The early days in Long Beach, what did that look like? It was probably nothing like it is now.
100%. I mean, it didn't even look like anything remotely close to what cannabis looks like today. It was completely different. So kind of, and you see the logo in the back. So I'm on the board of directors of the Long Beach Collective Association. Long Beach Collective Association is a local nonprofit organization that really focuses on the cannabis industry. And really, that's when we got started in 2009 and 2010. A lot of the activities when started to move policies when the actual organization started, kind of unifying the industry. So we were really thrilled to have this organization and this freeway of information to say, and this was in early 2010. And at the time, the city of Long Beach, they had about 80 or so dispensaries throughout the city. And what ended up happening was the city wanted to regulate too many dispensaries. They weren't, they were on all over. There wasn't any proximity to schools. It was just all over the place. So they brought forward an ordinance, which was 5.87 at the time. And that's a local ordinance to regulate cannabis in the city of Long Beach. It was pretty much one of the first, if not, I want to say the first attempt to actually give a permit for a cannabis facility. Los Angeles, they did a lot, but they did like limited immunity. So it was kind of not for they can't be prosecutable to say if they had a certain license, but that's what the license that they opened up at the time, and it was mainly for retail and cultivation. Cultivation at the time was a big thing. Really came from a security perspective. It wasn't even from because the police, the city, and different individuals wanted to make sure that we could be able to find, capture where this product is coming from. It's grown here in the city. It's sold here in the city, and that was the extent of any potential supply chain connection at the time.
Oh wait, so it had to be grown and sold in Long Beach
it
originally.
that that's how the policy came into place on the local level, but in practicality, because there was no state laws or regulations, And at the time it was, 215, SB 420, and all the other laws, the health code laws that governed at the time, they couldn't enforce that. But from a policy perspective, it was implemented with that thought.
Hmm. Who were the leaders at the city that were the proponents that were our friends, or was this just sort of a let's tax this thing and control it rather than realizing that it was a valuable industry?
It was really a mixture of a lot of things that happened. It was, it was council's directive, and at the time there were really some people in council that understood the issue from a safe access perspective,
Hmm.
right? Just as a concept, right? We know we have medical patients. We know that cannabis can help, and we need to be able to provide access. That's how limited the conversation was, and that access would be in the framework of a retail and cultivation. So it didn't really go into the nuances. Of course, like, there was lab testing requirements, but there wasn't any lab tests. There was lab testing facilities, but it wasn't the way it is, for example,
It
today.
wasn't required.
No, it wasn't. It was nothing that can be enforced because the product was still at large, coming from all over the place.
Were you
Not
guys just selling flour at the time?
You know what? In 2000, yes, we were. In 2010, actually, for the whole entire time that we were open, during that time, we only sold flour. At the time, the city required like a kitchen if you were going to do edibles. Even at the time, that wasn't even really a conversation. Even in those days, the manufactured products were still so very limited in regards to access. I mean, I remember some of the first chocolate bars that came even knocked on the dispensary door, and it was very hard to find the next, on a production commercial level, to say, right? Not, there's been brownies and people cooking for a long time with cannabis, but it was only flour for us at that time.
Was it in baggies?
uh no, it was good old jars and pop tops,
Okay. Oh
we had
yeah.
jars, and be able to kind of get the whole jar, get the whole experience, use some chopsticks, get in there and be able to kind of get the patients what they're looking for.
Interesting. So, I'm a member of the Long Beach Collective Association, and I didn't realize that that's when it was formed. I thought, for some reason, I thought it was formed because there was a big event that happened where all of your licenses got taken away. Did that happen, or am I dreaming that?
No, well, it wasn't. Are you talking about like in the early 2012 days?
Yeah, when you guys had to organize to get an initiative going.
Yeah, so that was so what ended up happening, this is 2010. We got together, the city brought forward the ordinance 5.87. And then we all went through a process. And through that process, all the legal operators became the Long Beach Collective Association, pretty much most of them.
Right.
And we operated under that ordinance for about 2.5 years. And there was a PAC versus Long Beach case, which was a very substantial, huge case for cannabis, not only for the city of Long Beach, but for the whole entire state of California. And it was a lawsuit by some folks from the industry, by an attorney. That this is all very long time ago to say, but that really said that it's federally illegal to be able to give a permit out for cannabis, and they pressed the federal button in regards to kind of blowing up the city's process. And at the time, there was a very there was hostile police, city attorney's office, other individuals, and honestly, cannabis at that time was always looked at or compared to either gang affiliated, mafia, Russian, a lot of different stuff. So there was this lack of knowing of who's on the other side of the industry. And for those reasons, drugs and tough on drugs and crime, to say, I think the ban went into place 2.5 years after the program was in place. And that last day, that was August 12th, 2012, that we operated, the very following day, all of our facilities, we closed down and turned them into pretty much like campaign centers. We started to register people to vote, and we rolled out our first ballot initiative in 2012. Now, of course, this is the first time we ever do a ballot initiative. This is the first time even anybody thought in the world that they'd be in a situation to be talking about even doing a ballot initiative. But being in the, being there for 2.5, dealing with the patients, developing so much within our facilities in the industry, it was hard to just walk away from all the work, especially when we have so many people saying, no, we need this. So we knew we were on the right side of things, but the system itself was far from that. So we started the first ballot initiative. It was really a volunteer, lot of, strapping up by the boots, to say bootstraps, and doing the work. We eventually submitted 6 months later 55,000 signatures to regulate and tax in the city of Long Beach. It was a huge effort, a lot of learning. About a month or so later, a couple months later, the city came back and certified that we did not get the right amount of votes and that we were 18 signatures short from our 1-to-1 count to be able to qualify. Granted, at the time, we were shooting for 15% of the registered voters to trigger a special election so we can move this as fast as possible, to say. But in state law, it says if you reach 10%, then the voters need to vote. We got 14.89% on the city's count, and that ballot initiative did not get certified. We ended up in courts for almost 2.5, 3 years, and we went from talking about cannabis regulation and policy to voter rights, because now we're going in under voter rights laws that, hey, the people that have voted have well past the threshold and they should have the right to vote. We went to federal court, or the attorneys at that time thought that was the way. 2.5 years later, that eventually did not get vindicated in the courts. It was a sad day, I think, for voter rights plus cannabis. But that was our first attempt. But nonetheless, the city still recognized that we got tens of thousands of signatures, and they put up a tax policy for the election. So if a industry does come into place, that there will be taxes in place. And also, they moved a potential ordinance back to the planning commission from a zoning perspective. So we spent about a year in the zoning and planning commission hearings, working with the planning commissioners to be able to develop a good zoning program to go back to city council. We did a good job with planning commission. I think we got a favorable outcome considering the volatility of the industry at that time. City council then decided to do a task force, which was a 18-member task force. It was a citywide task force. And you literally had everybody from all walks of life. You had federal judges, SWAT team officers, PTA moms, patients, industry operators. I was, lucky enough and fortunate enough to be appointed onto that task force commission. So we spent about a year with all the spectrum of people, and believe it or not, we actually came out with also a favorable policy to move things forward. At the time that went forward, the city council ended up botching kind of the program and decided not to do anything at all. And that was pretty tough. This is now, I'm talking about maybe 2015. So this is about 3 years of working with the city and going through the processes and going through every single hearing. And, at the end, it's obvious now it was a delay and deny tactic, but nonetheless, I think there was, still a lot of interested people to move it forward. And during that time, we actually partnered and started to communicate with United Food and Commercial Workers. At that point, we launched our second ballot initiative in 2016. It was the LBCA, and we also worked with UFCW and so many other leaders in the city, in the community, volunteers. I mean, it was a huge effort. And we went again and got another 55,000 signatures and submitted them to the city. We actually did that from our location, and the first ballot initiative right there on 7th Street. But and we got certified. It was an awesome, it was a really tough moment. I mean, from the time that we got decertified the first time till we got certified the next time, it was probably around 3.5, 4 years. So it was definitely a big, huge moment that now we can at least get the chance to get for people to vote on it, Um, and it was awesome. It got certified. It went on the election. We got Congressmember Alan Lowenthal's endorsement. We got various city council people's endorsement. We got a lot of community leader. I mean, we really turned a page, and you can see the difference in timing from just 2009, 2010 to 2016 to say. And we went on that presidential election, right, November of 2016. The our ballot initiative won by 60% of the voters.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. So that kind of and that's really when in 2017 operations started again. This time we had more information from the state. We saw some draft regulations. It was really under a whole different terms of policy and regulation. A lot more support for the city. A lot of landscaping political issues kind of changed at that time. So yeah, so we started operations in 2016, 17, late 2017. And opening up that process was huge. We were working with various city departments, fire department on education really about the industry. So that way we can go about a way to get licensed and, kind of streamline the process between operator and city government to say. So, and that's kind of the start of the industry, kind of 2018 to say.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have said many times that trying to organize the industry is like herding cats, but you guys were able to do it, and you're a terrific example to the rest of the state. I wish more groups could be successful like you guys have been.
Well, it hasn't been easy. It's been a lot of time for them, but I will tell you if it wasn't for the group, yeah, if it wasn't for the group and everybody really working together, there's no way such an effort would have even been possible.
Yeah, I mean, and you're really making it sound like it wasn't as hard as it really was. A lot of you folks were on the hook for 10 years and some leases that the city gave you approval to do this, and you entered into these long-term leases that and they wasted your time on that committee for a year. It's
I
just.
mean, we had our life savings invested. I mean, like, look, we I worked before. I never was in the industry before we got into the industry in Long Beach. So I worked really hard to be able to save and borrow and get everything to be able to open up in the business. And I know so many other of my colleagues at the time did the same. And some of them got their mom's life pension and their father's pensions, and then you have the city that says you're giving you a green light and everybody's go to say. So you're 100% that the trials and tribulations of over the years. We held on to our properties. We had 20-year leases, not 10-year leases. And the amount of kind of personal damage, whether from the family time, and of course, from the time we closed to the time we opened was about 6 years or so. So it was definitely a very well drawn out effort that so many people fell off. I won't lie, most people did. It wasn't until at one point it was only not even a handful of people that were still really around trying to keep things moving. So you know but that's kind of how the trajectory of legalization kind of came up from 2018 to 2018.
So, I've always thought it was weird when cities have lotteries, and I wanted to get your thoughts on whether they should do lotteries or it should be merit based. And I'd also like to hear you talk about how the Long Beach lottery, because I think it was kind of a mess.
Yeah. Well, the first one was a mess. The second one,
Oh,
Yep.
happy 420, everybody. Smoke them if you got them. Go ahead.
Happy 420. So, um, they the lottery is here's the thing. Here's the issue. It depends how the whole entire program comes together, right? I think a merit-based application is a good way to be able to bring good operators to the top, right? You also have to have the ability for people to get some merits as well too, so they can be part of that process. But a lottery, even when you do the merit based, let's just say you have a city like whatever, Torrance, and it's just going to allow for 10 locations and you have 100 applicants. And out of the 100 applicants, 15 of them scored the same. At that, and that happens. And it's happened before. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it works out that the top 10 were truly the top 10. But you'll find out the top 9, and then you'll have like 3, 4 people that will get the same score. And at that point, I've done so much research, like lottery, this, that. There isn't a lot of different mechanisms to randomize and count somebody. The ABC, the alcohol beverage control, they also do lotteries, for example, for lottery liquor licenses and stuff like that. So it's just been old and it's been used. Do I think it's ideal? No, but it's still being used. It got used this time around, and as long as it's a good, clean process.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's it right there. I'm helping a client with an application in Fresno, and they had an orientation meeting, and I brought up the question, and so did several other people. It's like, who are these people that are scoring the applications, and shouldn't the names of the applicant be redacted so they don't know whose application? And are they do any of them have ownership in somebody else's application? It's just really, it's not transparent.
It's not, and it doesn't help that they don't really that most cities are not looking towards good places, and the reality is there isn't a lot of good places that have good policy. And when you set up a policy and there's a local effort to say, and if you don't have a really good council that's willing to take the right steps to be able to figure out a policy that can think of also that process, you're going to end up with, ordinances that end up in issues or end up being scrapped or sued, so I think it's really important, you to look at those ordinances and understand, because sometimes you can see those type of things where the transparency is, not 100% in regards to, the applicants and the process. And look, and I'm not saying it's intentional or not. I'm really saying it's just from lack of knowing perspective. They and then they end up kind of putting people in this weird situation.
Well, there's plenty of examples and precedents now. It's not, you guys were on the cutting edge in Long Beach, but now lots of other cities have done it, and
Sure.
cities can look at why other cities got sued, and they should be doing better. But like in Fresno, for example, they're just like, nope, we're not going to tell you who's scoring these things. It's like, okay.
Yeah, though that, definitely look, access is going to come to other cities, and you're going to see more regulations coming down the way. So those processes do need to be transparent. Who's the points, who's applying, and look, at the end of the day, you're going to open up a place that's going to be open to the public. So, I mean, it's nothing to hide, to say.
Right. So you went to college, I believe you said in Fullerton, right? And you studied business finance. So did you do that because you anticipated getting into the cannabis industry, or how did you come about finding the cannabis industry, or did it find you?
It found me.
It called you?
It felt no. I went to Cal State Fullerton. I went for business. I did not intend when I graduated college. I graduated. I really was not thinking of that. I was going to use it for the cannabis industry. I thought I was going to use it for, owning my own business. That's something that I did want to do on very early to say. And part of the reason I went through business to kind of understand business a little better, finances especially, but did not have an intention on the cannabis. But what it was of how I got into the cannabis industry and how I said it kind of fell into my lap is when I graduated in college, which is like around the 2009 time, actually, I wanted to open up my own business afterwards. And me and, my partner, we sat down and we talked about the cannabis industry and we talked about Long Beach coming into place. And I thought it was, I'm for the product. I use the product. I've had a grandfather that had cancer, so I believe it's a good thing. I understand the product, but I've never thought that I would actually be in the industry or even thought about an opportunity. But then, and we went and we had very little money at the time, just enough to try to scrape open a place. And we got lucky with our landlord, which is still our current landlord till today. And she's an awesome, amazing person because she's been a big proponent of the industry by supporting us throughout all those years being closed. Right.
Wow.
But, and we got a lease and we got in there and we won the lottery. And we actually were our buffer zones were very far. So we were the ones that we were anticipating that the lottery would come to us at the time, just mathematically, because we had no buffers. Nobody was around us. And we had our buffers. We were like 1,000 feet further than any of the required buffers. So that was really, and when we won that lottery, that day we won and we got the business license going. And that was my kind of step into the industry.
Wow.
Now we have to figure out where we're going to get all the weed from.
Well, where are you getting all the weed from?
Well, 2009, 10.
Yeah.
It was, my first experience, and we were going to open up the shop. We started it with 3 pounds, 9 strands. 3 pounds, 9 strands. And we got it from, it was, I knew a friend, I knew a patient, we had to grow, and, we ended up getting the pounds. And that was what was our start. And we got it fronted. And then slowly, as you open up the doors, you would have vendors that would come in. But then there was a lot of issues. You have vendors, you're not sure really what's going on, what's the deal, what's behind, what kind of issues. You also had undercover. It was just so many different issues that were coming in through the doors. And then you start to develop relationships and go through that. But, there's a lot of, farms in the Northern California, and, California's been growing well before any legalization came into place. So, you start to kind of go into the supply chain just as we do today.
Yeah, so that was my next question is let's talk about the state of retail and the supply chain. What's going on today?
Well, there's a lot going on a lot of different fronts. So let me just kind of talk to one of the most glaring issues right now in the retail and supply chain issue. Besides all the COVID issue that just affects everything on top of everything to say, is that right now the supply chain is a lot faster and increasing in its ability of production than it is for the ability for retailers to get open to be able to provide access to these products. So I think we may have 600 plus or so dispensaries throughout the state. That was the last time I checked. And in a state of, I don't know how many million, 40 million plus 48 or I don't know, million people is very low. And right now it's estimated that probably 70+% of the actual everyday sales of products are actually happening in the traditional / illicit market. So obviously there's a huge demand, and the problem is the legal supply of retail facilities being around literally on the ground in different cities is the issue. So we have a lot of great farms. We have a lot of mom and pop manufacturers, huge farms, a lot of great products and people trying to launch and do their thing. But if you don't have the ability to be able to sell that through the legal channels, you're also in store for a lot of losses and a lot of issues, and then you have to cap your production to say, and depending on whatever market size you have, that could be detrimental to your business. And I think that having the ability to increase is huge, and it's really at first it's a safe access issue. Don't ever forget, the supply, the demand is not going away. I mean, it's not actually, the supply and the demand is not going away, right? What kind of supply is the question? The demand is not going away. So we can ban it. And that was the conversation that we had. And now we see a lot more cities moving forward, but you can ban it as much as you want. People are still going to access cannabis.
Yeah.
So we have to provide safe access for patients and consumers. And then we also now have to have good, sane policy around the state and around other areas to be able to actually move forward the retail and have really more people participate into the legal industry.
So do you think that if there was more legal retail, that it would make the traditional market smaller?
I mean, by default, yes, but that's not going to be the only thing. I mean, if you have more legal stores, more people will more than likely stumble into them, and then they'll participate. And that does not change the fact that when they stumble into them and then they find out that the tax rate is so high and that they can go back to the traditional market and get double the quantity for half the price, that is something else, And I think what really bottom line, and people got to understand, is and that's kind of some of really the main issues in today, is really the policies today do not get fully encompass the multifaceted issues that the cannabis industry really touches. The safe access, right? The social justice issues, the jobs of the futures, the tax revenues that can really come as long as we can think of outside of the box approaches and widen the tax base so we can invite users in the traditional illicit market into the legal safe market. And I think, at the same time, to allow a streamlined process for the traditional and future operators to participate in the legal industry, so that way they can also abide by the rules just like everybody else. You have to allow for people to engage in it, and we need to allow the users and the consumers to also be able to engage. And it's a lot of facets that we can be able to capture. Right now, the main issue is the taxes, because the consumers to say are not coming. Now, look, all the consumers love the fact that they're getting, and we wear this like a badge of honor, as some of my colleagues say, the highest lab testing standards in California, if not maybe the nation, and other, when it comes to cannabis, for sure, probably the nation. I mean, we have organic blueberries that are failing tests with our cannabis infused products because they don't meet cannabis standards, even though they meet like organic, Trader Joe standards, right? Or whatever it may be to say. So, it is, but it's expensive. And, because of the taxes and the main issue, and I'll tell you, the taxes, is that you're having a layering of taxes. So you have the cultivation tax that goes into, then it goes into the excise tax, and you have the city taxes on top of all those taxes. And then you have the state taxes on top of the combination of all those taxes. So it's really a compound tax more than it is a straightforward tax. And I'm not a tax guy, but
that seems really wrong. To tax a tax on a tax. I mean, that's crazy. Do you think that your customers and patients understand why it's pricier?
Well, and to that point, it's been a huge thing for me, and I know I speak for so many others, to be able to work with our frontline workers, the people working on the bud tending, the registration, and the back. And for them, when they interact with a patient or an adult use consumer, to explain to them the products, explain to them, what does it mean to have this tag on here? And when it tells you how much THC, CBD, whatever, contents it is, that is because most consumers don't know. Actually, most consumers, we did a we worked with the health department and we got a grant with the health department, and we did a citywide education, and where we would table at different neighborhood organizations and just do cannabis education. And most everybody that comes and talks to us, they think that Prop 64 passed, everything is legal, now I can just take it. And it's no. Did you know that, you have, these are the legal facilities that are lab tested? Oh, what about that one that's over there? Oh, that city is not even legal in its own right now to even have dispensaries. So it's going to be in a traditional or illicit market. So I still think most consumers don't know, and everyday people, even if they're not consumers, especially, really don't know the difference. There's state efforts that were done, and we try to support. It's an ongoing process. Nothing happens overnight. But today, there's so much more education to be done.
So much. I got in an argument with one of my neighbors because she thought that because Prop 64 passed, she could take the cannabis she was growing in her backyard and turn it into a balm and sell it to everybody. She did not understand that she could not do that.
Yeah, it took away the cooperative, the collective, the patient model away from that Prop 215 had. So, now it's commercial grade cannabis.
Yeah. Yeah, the question is, how do we educate? They have so much to learn. Like, I don't even think most people understand how much they're paying in taxes. You know, I don't think they would believe it.
No, it's not. And and they don't know. And the problem is there's a sticker shock sometimes. And that's why you see a lot of places you have like, oh, taxes are included. Let me just give you the bottom line price. Last thing somebody wants to see is walk in and find an item for $30, and then somehow they're walking out with like 45 to say, or $42 in taxes, um, because the reality is we are the minority when it comes to the market share, and we want people to be comfortable with what they're comfortable with. And you know and it's evolving, and it's funny because of being on both sides of the equation, operating in 2010 when we didn't have all the state program, and today, it's been tough because look, these are everyday people that might have two jobs that need cannabis, whether for medicinal, for adult use, for everyday wellness purposes, you know and if you use it as a regimen, it's expensive, for the everyday person. So that's why it's part of safe access was also making it affordable.
That was supposed to be part of it for sure.
Mhm.
If we could wave a magic wand and have a new statewide initiative, what would be your top three priorities to change, to put on there?
Well, I think number one would be taxes.
Change the taxes.
Modernize the taxes, fix the taxes.
Modernize. I like that.
Yeah, I think looking at
Who
the
came up
tax.
with that? That's beautiful. It's like you guys are so in the past. What's up? Modernize these damn taxes.
Absolutely, and that's really what it is. I mean, look, taxes is a huge thing. In 2010, when Prop 19 was in Long Beach, the city of Long Beach put up a tax ballot that if Prop 19 passed, this tax measure would come into effect. It had a 25% retail tax rate at the time. This is 2010. Okay.
Jesus.
So a lot of these thoughts, and there's so many other cities, this is not just the city of Long Beach, all of them really had the sense of that's how the tax rate is, because it originated from a sin tax perception, stigma, right, of the cannabis industry. Let's tax it. If we're going to deal with it, let's tax the heck out of it. But it's so much more than just that. I mean, today, especially California, we're a leader when it comes to data, technology, information. We have some of the greatest minds in the nation and companies that can do calculations to get to space, right? We got Tesla doing things all over the place, right? So I think we could, really be data driven and be more objective about how to tax the cannabis industry, because I don't think that there's a current model that you can look at and say, oh, look, alcohol. That's how we're gonna do cannabis. Oh, cigarettes. It's not. We're not alcohol. We're not cigarettes. We're not tobacco. It's different. Cannabis is one day can cure something and or development in people's ailments to adult use. It gets conflated, but it's just that kind of product because it reaches so many different people.
Right, it's that, and also no other product has such a gigantic traditional market that is untaxed, so they need to tax the entire market. I don't
But
understand how they don't get that.
well, I mean, and the real key is to widen the tax base.
Hmm.
That's how we get people to participate. And look, we got to keep in things today and in the future. Today, we need tax relief
Yes,
today,
yes.
now, for the industry. Okay, because if not, instead of it standing on its feet in 3 years to 4 years, it's going to take 10 years, or it's going to take a lot longer, or worse, like to your point, Prop 64 will fail, and then another ballot will have to come into place because it won't, because just especially where today stands. And that's why I think, some sort of temporary emergency tax reduction or tax modernization, or some sort of just support for 3 years to be able to get the industry to get going, get more people to participate in the industry, and then we can look at it. So taxes is a huge thing. I think, um, regulations is another important thing that really needs to get looked. I think as the easier and the simpler we can make this while taking the stigma out of the industry would do everybody so much better. Till today, for example, we have a barcode on a product, and this barcode is made by the manufacturer. And then from the manufacturer, it goes to the distributor. And then there's another barcode that goes to it. And then by the time it gets to me, and because of our track and trace system, we have to barcode every single facility. I can't use those barcodes because my POS system cannot register with those, and based on metric. So now we got to literally go sticker every single joint, every single item in the place. And I'm giving you one example of some of the regulatory requirements. So it's like back in the grocery stores, like 25 years ago, where you have a guy with a sticker putting all the pricing on each one. Today we scan, we do things, we move forward at a much faster. So, and those are all regulatory costs that really are hurting the business, because if I can use that manufacturer's barcode, as soon as he comes in, I scan it, it reads with metric, it reads with my system. It's, a huge difference.
That sounds like it would keep metric tighter too. It, makes more sense.
It's the technology not able to communicate with each other yet because of the infancy stage of the industry. Like this, because you have so many different retail POSs, so many different back end POSs. Is this is this barcode registering with this POS? It's very immature in area in regular business that's so advanced right now. Like we don't have barcode issues in other industries.
Right, right.
It's just not one of those things that we discuss. So those are so being able to streamline the process for the current operators, for the future operators, and people that have been in the industry. And I think that's gonna need a little bit of dive into to kind of help that process. And the fees, that kind of the fee structure that's designed is going to be huge.
So modernize the taxes, the regulations need to be simpler, lower the barrier to entries, something like that.
Well, I would put that with the regulations. That's what's going to lower the barriers to entry. I would say this also, with these policies, that I would say because cannabis is so multifaceted. Like I said, jobs, taxes, social justice issues, years of reform, manufacturing, the future. The third thing would be, be able to combine and be able to understand the policies, need to understand the different dynamics of cannabis and be able to reflect that into the policy so we can have an intentional policy on the state level that will trickle also down with the city level and give them their local control. I do believe in local control. Um, so that way it captures all of these things, right? Streamlining, tax reduction, allowing people to participate into the industry. How do we capture the future jobs of the industry? How do we deal with current social issues, current social programs that are coming out, right? Social equity programs that are coming out. That would be the third one is, kind of
Yeah.
truly capture the depth of cannabis for what it really is, more than just a tax generating event or endeavor to say.
All right, I just want to let our audience know I'm going to leave some time for Q&A, so get your questions ready to ask. I'll let you turn on your microphones and your video so you can ask Adam some questions. I wanted to, though, two things. I wanted to hear your thoughts on what interstate commerce would look like if we could accomplish that real quick here during this crisis. And also, do you know who is going to replace Lori Ajax?
Let me answer your second question because that's easier. No.
Okay.
I do not know who's going to replace Lori Ajax. But I hope that whoever is that individual that does, brings a new dynamic to that agency, especially, because the agencies are now combining. So
Right.
I think there's going to be a little bit of a kind of a combined different direction. I don't think that has anything to do with her leaving, but yeah, I'm not sure who's coming on next. And then your first question, which was interstate commerce. Okay, so interstate commerce would be one of the biggest steps for California. I'm going to speak very specific for California industry. Here, in California, we're talking about policies. We're talking about all of these different things. We're not raising the bar in California. Okay, we are the bar when it comes to cannabis in California, and I don't say that as an individual as that. I'm just saying that as just for so many years. Look at culturally, California is known in the world. There isn't a better place that cannabis. It's the largest in the world. So it's that in its own is a great opportunity for anybody that's doing business in California, because eventually if we have interstate commerce, now we can be able to provide Ohio with California products. We can provide New Jersey. We can be able to provide Montana, all of these, which I think all of them, just like myself, grew up culturally, whether music, whether TV, whether whatever it was around, cannabis in a California, and I think that experience is going to be huge, and I think it's going to explode. And then the next step that would come after that would be, international trade. I mean, look, it's going to happen. It's just not now. We see Mexico right now making moves. We see other cities that are making other countries that have already made moves. Eventually, it will, be a commoditized, and then that will also open up your ability, just like California sends its wine to South Africa, and it's a hot and very expensive item, or wherever it may be, to say, so will cannabis. But I think in the immediate interstate commerce, it'll be huge. But again, this is all federal level stuff. Right now, if you get across federal lines, you can get in a lot of trouble with cannabis, period. And when we can be able to get that, we start to really tap into the full potential of the industry, because again, it's opening up, it's trying to meet the demand. If you just simple supply and demand in California, we have so much demand, so does the whole nation, and so does the rest of the world. There is demand for this product, period. So, and the access gets so much less the more you move away from California, to say, and there's going to be a high demand for it. So I think it's huge. I think, there's a lot of federal issues that go into that, but on a state level, we should be advocating for that, because that's going to be the next big bump for safe access and for the industry.
Yeah, I don't know if you had an opportunity to hear Adam Smith speak on the state of cannabis. He's spoken twice about what he's doing with interstate commerce, but he's a really smart guy. and he got interstate commerce for Oregon, and it's his feeling that it's a states' right issue, and if the two states both have an agreement and have their laws in place, that cannabis can be put on a train, because there's some special thing about railroad tracks, and go from one state to the other, crossing through states, but not stopping. That is very possible, and it's possible in the near future. And the reason it makes so much sense is because these states that are coming online, they're going to have a much quicker road to success if they don't have to set up the whole entire supply chain.
That's a really interesting point. I'll tell you for two reasons. State rights, 10th Amendment, right? You remember when I told you about the Pack versus Long Beach case? It was against federal law, did not allow us to permit. We're like, hey, we started to say 10th Amendment, right? Because this is our state, this is our city, and this is a state right thing, and the 10th Amendment is one of the most interesting amendments, and it's not as used as much as it should be. I do believe in the 10th Amendment should be a little bit stronger, but what will end up happening, and what we found, and it could happen, is that you're right. There could be basic charters between Oregon, California, or wherever it may be. But then the minute that the federal government gets involved and it goes into litigation, it will have to go to the highest courts, potentially, or a court, for it to be able to rule on a 10th Amendment ruling. And that's some of how, especially states, but it also goes back to who's in the federal government and who's in the White House, right? Is it going to be like, what was the attorney general that was before this one that really went against cannabis?
Jeff Sessions.
Jeff Sessions.
Smoke Sessions.
Right. Yeah. So if you have somebody like him in place to say, with that mentality, and have the authority to do as he pleases, I think it would be a challenge, and it would be a big issue, and it would be locked up in courts. But
it's not going to be a priority right now. I mean, look at all the things that they have to deal with. They're going to just go, and by then, every state will have legalization. I mean, it just seems like we need to move on this sooner than later. So everybody, I put it in the chat. Go to statescan'twait.org. No, sensiblemarkets.org, or I think you can do statescan'twait.org too. If you want to learn more, it's a really, really smart plan. I want to open up for audience questions. You've got your mic on, Howard. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. How often have you seen flower tests come back positive for metals, pesticides, or biofungus bacteria? And is any of this data being compiled, visible anywhere?
Sure.
By the state or by private?
So I'll tell you this, on a retail level, the answer is 0. If it makes it to our front doors, it never has any of those items in it, right? Our items are all safe and clean, passed. We're final form on a retail level. But your question would be directed from a cultivator to a lab tester, right? How many cultivators gave it to the lab testers? And from my understanding is that many of these cultivators have been doing a really good job of not failing tests. But there are still that do fail tests. 80% of those are microbials that are really catching it, which is not getting your humidity levels right in your grows or your farms or wherever you're at. And that could fail your test. The pesticides, the metals, people are wise enough and understand that those are not going to go anywhere because of the track. So they're not really being as used as an issue as much generally. But there is flour that fails. And there's different abilities, between extracting it and remediating it as well. So there's different remediation processes. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to do your intended. If you fail, it's never a good thing, right? Because the remediation is a matter of just a recovery than it is anything else, of the product. And there's certain remediation ways that you can actually bring back the product. In certain situations that you cannot, it must be destroyed. And all of those things that are destroyed are held by like lab tests for a certain amount of days, and then they're being disposed of, and they're also being tracked in metric, and it has to link back to the licenses, and it actually is about the chain of custody of the product. So they will not have the chain of custody on the product if it fails.
Did that answer your question, Howard?
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Well, is there, do you
Ed,
know if that
go ahead.
information is being collected by the state or?
Yes, all failed flour, past flour, everything is being collected. Lab tests are required to be held, I think, for like 2-3 years. Don't quote me. I don't have the regulation right in front of me, but you have to hold your lab test. You have to hold all of our records have to be held for 7 years. So anything that happens must be held based on the record standards of your local and state policy.
All right.
I'm sorry,
Cool.
sorry to repeat, but have you heard of cannabis ever failing for metals?
Yes, I mean, cannabis can fail for all of those things that you mentioned, and it happens. Like metals and heavy metals, you might find a lot of those like coming up in vape pens and the type of hardware that you're using for your vape pen, right?
But
You
the
know,
flour?
yeah, the flour that gets extracted into distillates or a lab resin or whatever it may be, and then you're going buying a cart from China that has certain metals in it that you did not expect, and now mixing that with the oil will fail a heavy metal test.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but how about flour just by itself intrinsically?
Yes,
Does that ever fail for metals?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. And that's why they test for it, to make sure it doesn't fail.
But it can be remediated.
Not all times, but there is remediation options from the flour to extraction methods, potentially. Just,
Not for heavy metals?
for all different types of things. Again, like when you go into an extraction product, if you grab a flour and you turn it into an oil, anything that you have in there is going to expand dramatically in regards to it because of the concentration of the cannabis oil. But at that same time, now that you have an oil, you can refine those things away, right? Through a refining process. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to end up with the desired amount that you should have had, but there is ways on certain failures that you can remediate it and get that out from an oil perspective, or certain flour remediation types, and metals is one of them. You really want to dig into a lab testing and a manufacturer when it comes to those, those are the people that would be able to, help remediate and potential failed products if it's possible.
Awesome. Okay, Ed, you've got a question, right? Go ahead. We can't hear you, Ed. Doesn't look like are you muted? No, you're not muted, but we can't hear you.
Let's see, let me try something else.
There you
Hear
go.
you now, Ed.
Now we can.
Great. I wanted to get a feel for what's going on in the industry. What is it like for you guys? You don't really get a view of, you mentioned kind of about like tax reform and some things that may happen if something isn't done. So just kind of give us an idea of what's going on in the industry, what their problems are,
Sure.
just kind of.
Sure. So and I see here, what is the business environment like in the industry? So the current so first of all, there's so many different aspects of cannabis today from an industry perspective. There's business issues, there's policy issues, there's tax issues, and education issues. For me, I've been fortunate enough through the work and the team that I work with to get exposed to a lot of these different things, and for example, a retailer is going to have complete different issues than a cultivator. A cultivator is going to have different issues than a distributor. So when you get into the industry, each license type will have different plans for different things in the industry. So me as a retailer, my main issues is, taxes, right now, COVID, dealing with safety, making sure education, getting the information that's out there. and policy development, you know, that impacts directly. Where maybe a cultivator, his main issues are going to be, you know, a harvest issue, logistics, you know, sales. Who, you know, now it's great. I just grew 1,000 pounds or 500 pounds or whatever it is. Now, where are we going to go with it? And then the budgets that's around it. You know, a lot of the issues right now is really financial. It's either you have a lot of people that are very well funded, but you know, and those also really funded people have their issues. You can see MedMen, for example, very heavily funded at one point, but now you have all these financial issues because it's more than just having money, in my opinion, to the industry. You know, you got the experience, the knowledge. And then you have the other industry where most of the industry is struggling slash trying to get a footing into the industry, whether from its market share or it's obtaining a license from the city, you know, 2.5 years through the process. But you know, the good news is that a lot of the Gen 1 stuff has been looked at. There is a more better programs that are coming out that can, you know, and that means that there's going to be more cities and more opportunities. So before you saw like it was a very, you know, condensed on which cities, like 80 right now, I think 80% of cities are still banning in the state of California. So there's going to be so many more, especially with COVID and the crisis, and for the state tax generation, especially with so many people losing jobs and being able to get into the industry. I think we're going to see more opportunities open up over the next few years to be an owner or to have a career in the industry, a good career in the industry, you know. um, it's just, you really got to have a good plan, talk to the right people. There's a lot of bad people, there's a lot of corporate vultures, there's a lot of frauds, there's a lot of people that will promise you the moon and tell you this and that. You know, the best thing that I've probably, you know, is be there yourself. You know, sometimes you get this, it's, oh, I can do this for you, I can do this for you. Sometimes, you know, especially that you wanting to be in the industry, you know, you got to learn. At some point you have to go through the process, and we make mistakes, but that's how we learn.
Absolutely. I think the best consultant is the one that says, no, don't do it, and you should listen to them. Except for pioneers like you that are paving the way. Adam, thank you so much for doing all the things that you do. I'm proud to be able to call you a friend. I am excited about next year, and we are going to have some cannabis events in Long Beach.
Yes, we
in
are.
person. We are. I'm going to do the State of Cannabis in September in Long Beach, at least in part in person. We're going to figure this out, and we're going to make Long Beach the mecca of cannabis events, right?
Absolutely. A whole new great opportunity too.
Long Beach is where it's at.
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan, so much for doing what you're doing, hosting these things and sharing this information. And if anything comes up, you know, always, you know, we're, you can check out our website at the lbca.com. You can contact us. We have a whole host of operators, different people. We do volunteer, we do workshops. We just launched a community college course with Long Beach Community College, you know, for education. First time in the histories of the school. So we're very proud of that. So we're a very active group. So feel free to reach out. You know, we have a great community in the cannabis community, and you know, glad to be here, and thank you, Susan.
You guys are so active. I mean, there's volunteer things going on almost every week, and the food drives, and you go above and beyond. It's just really amazing what you've created. You should be very proud of yourself. And more people need to know about who you are and what you do, Adam.
I'll work on my LinkedIn. Stuff going a little bit.
Thank you so much. And this video will be available in the next couple of days so that you can share with your friends and associates. And it's coming up on Christmas, so buy my book.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put the website in the chat real quick for everybody. And if
Yes.
you reach out there, you'll get somebody from my organization. And thank you so much. But,
What's the name of you guys have a show, the Behind the Leaf?
Behind the Leaf, yeah, you can definitely, we have a media team. We work with, actually the city broadcasting, and we're on like channel 52 and something. And we do cannabis content every single month through our Behind the Leaf episodes, anywhere from city prosecutors, congressmen, state assemblymen, different people, local patients, just kind of getting the education and cannabis story out there.
Yeah, seriously, check out their website, because as you can see, they're doing so much. That's just one more thing. Long Beach Collective Association, just, if you're not going to be a member, you should at least participate in a meeting or two, or something that they're doing, just so you can learn by their example, because they're amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks everybody for jumping on, and good luck and happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
There it is.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.